FBI agents huddle around a record player in Washington, playing the same 3-minute song forwards, backwards, at different speeds. Parents flood radio stations with complaint letters. A teenager opens her mail to find razor blades and death threats. The Vatican issues an official condemnation. This wasn't wartime propaganda or political speeches. This was rock and roll in the 1960s. What made certain songs so dangerous that governments investigated them? Why did adults panic over 3-chord melodies? How did musicians with guitars become threats to social order? Today we're counting down 12 tracks from the 60s that sparked FBI investigations, international bans, and genuine moral panic. These songs didn't just push boundaries, they blew them apart. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications because we're revisiting the decade when music actually scared people in power. Let's jump in. Number 12, My Generation by The Who. People try to put us down. October 1965 brought a song that the BBC initially refused to broadcast. The corporation's official reason: the stuttering lyrics mocked people with speech impediments and violated broadcasting standards. Manager Kit Lambert had told Roger Daltrey to stutter the words deliberately to sound like he was high on amphetamine. Daltrey later admitted he actually struggled with stuttering in those days and controlled it better as he aged, making the performance more authentic than anyone realized. The controversy evaporated when the record became impossible to ignore. Climbing to number 2 on British charts. American audiences were less interested, where it only reached number 74. Pete Townshend wrote it on a train ride to Southampton on his 20th birthday. That stuttered line about fading away let listeners imagine an obscenity was coming. Another reason stations hesitated. The song became one of rock's most quoted statements about generational conflict. Hope I die before I get old meant rejecting your parents' attitudes, not wishing for early death, though that distinction got lost in translation. Number 11, Along Comes Mary by The Association. Every time I think that I'm the only one who's lonely, someone calls. When The Association arrived at Disneyland for a scheduled performance in 1966, the Orange County Sheriff's Department delivered direct orders. Do not perform your hit single. The reason was obvious to everyone except perhaps the most innocent listeners. Mary was marijuana and everyone knew it. Songwriter Tandine Ulmer confirmed it explicitly to journalists. Leonard Bernstein stated it on national television while analyzing the song's use of the ancient Dorian mode. Ulmer later invented a water pipe he called the Tandine Ulmer Bong, removing any remaining doubt. The cryptic, tongue-twisting lyrics provided just enough ambiguity for radio play. Mary, does she want to see the stains, the dead remains of all the pain she left? Several stations banned it anyway, but enough played it to send the track to number 7 in July 1966. Warner Brothers paid an unprecedented $1 million to acquire the association's contract, largely because this controversial song proved the band could generate hits despite censorship. Number 10, Brown Eyed Girl by Van Morrison. Van Morrison himself confirmed the mystery years later. The original title was Brown Skinned Girl, written as a Jamaican-style calypso celebrating interracial romance. He changed it before recording, though he struggled to remember exactly why. Some biographers suggest producer Burt Burns convinced him that a song about interracial dating wouldn't succeed commercially in June 1967, the same month the Supreme Court finally struck down laws forbidding mixed-race marriages. Radio stations also objected to the phrase making love in the green grass. We used to sing, Bang Records overdubbed the line without Morrison's permission, replacing it with laughing and running from an earlier verse. Morrison discovered the edit later and was furious. The song, captured on the 22nd take at A&R Studios, became one of the decade's most enduring hits. It reached number 10 and eventually became one of only 10 songs to achieve 10 million radio plays in America. Morrison rarely performs it and has openly stated he thinks 300 other songs he's written are better. The commercial success felt like a burden to him, not a triumph. Number 9, Purple Haze by Jimi Hendrix. Hendrix spent years denying the obvious. Purple Haze had nothing to do with drugs, he insisted to Rolling Stone. He claimed it depicted a dream about walking under the sea and being rescued by Jesus Christ. Nobody believed him because nobody could. And a cannabis strain still sold decades later. Manager Chaz Chandler defended him, claiming he witnessed the songwriting and saw no psychedelic influence. Biographers later noted that publicly denying drug connections would have been professional suicide for Hendrix at that moment in his career. Engineer Eddie Kramer created the distinctive sound using the Octavia effects pedal, marking its first appearance on any recording. Hendrix originally wrote about 1,000 words across 10 verses. Chandler trimmed it to 130 words and 3 minutes. End of time. Released in America the day after Hendrix burned his guitar at Monterey, the song only reached number 65 domestically. British audiences embraced it, sending it to number 3 and keeping it on charts for 14 weeks. The famous Mondegreen, where Kiss the Sky sounds like Kiss. This guy amused Hendrix so much he sometimes deliberately sang the wrong lyric while pointing at bandmates on stage. Number 8, Born to Be Wild by Steppenwolf. Yeah, darling, go make it happen. Take the world in a loving embrace. Mars Bonfire wrote this anthem about his beat-up Ford Falcon, not motorcycles. The Biker Association surprised him completely. He originally demoed it as a quiet ballad, whispering into his Telecaster in his apartment to avoid disturbing neighbors. Publishers rejected it because they wanted pop material like the Turtles were making. The phrase heavy metal thunder came to him during a thunderstorm while thinking about the periodic table from school. He had no idea those words would name an entire genre. Born to be wild. His brother Jerry Edmonton played drums in Steppenwolf, so Bonfire mailed the tape north. The band transformed his whispered ballad into hard rock that climbed to number 2 in summer 1968, blocked from the top spot for 3 weeks by the Rascals. Director Peter Fonda initially wanted Crosby, Stills, and Nash for Easy Rider's soundtrack. Born to Be Wild was temporary, but when test audiences responded, it stayed. The motorcycle connection became permanent. Bonfire recalled the moment he knew it had penetrated culture. He left a movie theater, walked into the restroom, and heard a stranger singing the song at the urinal. Yeah, gotta go make it happen. Take the world in a loving embrace. Number 7, Society's Child by Janis Ian. Come to my door, baby. Janis Ian received death threats and razor blades in her mail. She was 15 years old. She'd written the song at 13 while attending a predominantly African-American school in East Orange, New Jersey. The track depicted an interracial relationship destroyed by social pressure and parental racism. 22 record labels rejected it before producer Shadow Morton convinced Verve Folkways to release it, reportedly as a tax loss. Chicago's WLS refused airplay. Detroit stations banned it entirely. An Atlanta station that played the record was firebombed. One journalist lost his job for defending it. The breakthrough arrived when Leonard Bernstein featured Ian on his CBS special Inside Pop in April 1967, calling it fascinating. Ooh, baby, everybody's acting deaf and blind. The song charted just before the Supreme Court's Loving versus Virginia decision struck down the last anti-miscegenation laws. Session bassist George Duvivier, a jazz veteran, stopped the struggling session after 2.5 hours. He insisted everyone actually listen to the lyrics they were playing. They captured it on the next take. The song reached number 14 and sold over 600,000 copies despite organized opposition. Grammy Hall of Fame induction followed in 2002, recognizing both its musical quality and historical significance.
These days I'm gonna stop my listening, gonna raise my head up high.
Number 6, Light My Fire by The Doors.
You know that it would be untrue.
September 17th, 1967. The Doors stood backstage at Ed Sullivan's Theater after agreeing to change one line for broadcast standards. Girl, We Couldn't Get Much Higher would become Girl, We Couldn't Get Much Better. Jim Morrison sang the original lyric on live television. Producer Bob Precht, Sullivan's son-in-law, confronted them afterward. The Doors will never do this show again. Morrison's response became legendary. Hey, that's okay. We just did the Ed Sullivan Show. The band forfeited a negotiated deal for 6 more appearances. They didn't care. The song had already spent 3 weeks at number 1 that summer. Guitarist Robbie Krieger wrote it at his parents' Pacific Palisades home, the same house destroyed in January 2025's Palisades fire. It was his first composition ever, inspired by the Rolling Stones' Play with Fire and Morrison's challenge to write something universal. The keyboard intro Ray Manzarek created drew from Bach, while the extended solos borrowed chord progressions from John Coltrane's My Favorite Things. Radio required cutting the 7-minute album version down to 2 minutes 52 seconds. The track became Elektra Records' first number 1 single and sold over 900,000 copies by December 1971. Double platinum certification followed.
You know that I would be a liar if I was to say to you.
Number 5, In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida by Iron Butterfly. Drummer Ron Bushy arrived home from his pizza chef job to find songwriter Doug Ingle at the keyboard, having consumed an entire gallon of Red Mountain wine. When Bushy asked about the new song's title, Ingle slurred "In the Garden of Eden" so badly it emerged as In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida. Bushy wrote it phonetically on a napkin. The band kept the garbled title because it sounded mystical. The recording was supposed to be a sound check. Engineer Don Casale rolled tape without telling the band while they waited for the producer. The 17-minute jam that resulted felt perfect. Nobody saw a reason to record another tape. The track occupied the entire second side of the album and became the first record ever certified platinum when the RIAA instituted that award in 1976. It sold over 8 million copies in its first year, making it the biggest album of 1969. Radio couldn't play a 17-minute song, so the label edited it to 2 minutes 52 seconds. That version reached number 30, Iron Butterfly's only top 40 hit. The album spent 140 weeks on Billboard charts with 81 weeks in the top 10. Worldwide sales exceeded 30 million copies by some estimates. Extraordinary for a band that never had another major hit. The Simpsons satirized it in 1995, tricking a congregation into singing In the Garden of Eden by Iron Butterfly. The elderly organist collapsed after finishing the marathon song.
Won't you come with me and walk this line?
Number 4, Heroin by the Velvet Underground.
Things aren't quite the same when I'm...
Radio stations refused to play it. Magazines refused to carry advertisements for the album. Record stores banned it from shelves. The Velvet Underground and Nico sold approximately 30,000 copies in its first 5 years.
When I'm rushing on my run and I feel just like Jesus.
Producer Brian Eno later observed that everyone who bought one of those 30,000 copies started a band. Lou Reed wrote Heroin in 1964 while working at Pickwick Records making cheap sound-alike albums. When he played it for John Cale, Reed explained they wouldn't let him record these songs anywhere. Cale's response, "Let's go do it ourselves." Reed consistently denied advocating drug use, describing the song as objective description without moral judgment.
You can't help me, not you guys, or all you sweet pretty girls with all your sweet...
But he grew disturbed when fans told him they shot up to Heroin. making him hesitant to perform it in later years. Andy Warhol's contribution as nominal producer was providing complete creative freedom. When asked, "Is that okay, Mr. Warhol?" his typical response was, "Oh, yeah." Reed later reflected that the advantage of having Warhol as producer was that because he was Andy Warhol, they left everything in its pure state. The 7-minute track never charted. The album peaked at number 171, yet its influence proved incalculable, later recognized with Grammy Hall of Fame induction and placement in the National Recording Registry. Pitchfork ranked it number 7 on their greatest songs list in 2006. The album is now considered among the most influential recordings in rock history.
When I'm rushing on my run.
Number 3, The End by The Doors.
This is the end, beautiful friend.
August 21st, 1966, the Whiskey A Go Go on Sunset Strip. Jim Morrison arrived after spending the day on LSD at the Tropicana Hotel. During the end, normally the closing number, Morrison improvised the now infamous section explicitly screaming about wanting to kill his father and have sex with his mother. The band was fired immediately and banned from the venue. The silver lining appeared quickly. The Doors had already signed with Elektra Records. Getting fired freed them to complete their debut album, which reached number 2 and eventually sold 20 million copies worldwide. Keyboardist Ray Manzarek defended Morrison's outburst as theatrical, giving voice to the Oedipus complex in a rock and roll setting. Morrison had worked on a production of Oedipus Rex at Florida State University. The first studio attempt was chaos. Morrison arrived on acid, ended up lying on the floor mumbling. He threw a television at the control room window. Later that night, he broke into the studio, stripped naked, and drenched everything with a fire extinguisher. The studio charged damages to Elektra. The next day, they recorded in total darkness with a single candle beside Morrison. They nailed it in 2 takes. The explicit words were buried in the mix. Nearly 12 minutes long, the track was never released as a single, but became defining music of the psychedelic era, and featured prominently in Apocalypse Now 12 years later.
Can you picture what will be? Slowly.
Number 2, Louie Louie by the Kingsmen. The FBI spent 31 months investigating a 3-chord rock song, producing a 119-page file that concluded the lyrics were unintelligible at any speed. Indiana Governor Matthew Welsh slowed the record down and started hearing things that weren't there. Parents flooded Attorney General Robert Kennedy and J. Edgar Hoover with outrage letters. One January 1964 letter stated the lyrics were so filthy she couldn't write them down. FBI agents played the recording forwards, backwards, at different speeds. They attended Kingsmen concerts and stood beside speakers trying to detect obscenities. They found nothing because there was nothing to find. What investigators never discovered, drummer Lynn Easton actually did yell an obscenity at 54 seconds after fumbling a fill, buried forever in the muddy recording. The incomprehensibility was completely accidental. Singer Jack Ely had played a marathon gig the night before, leaving his voice ragged. The boom microphone was fixed too high, forcing him onto tiptoes while wearing dental braces that affected his pronunciation. The $50 session was meant as an audition tape for a cruise ship job. The song was blocked from number 1 for 6 non-consecutive weeks by The Singing Nun and Bobby Vinton. It sold 1 million copies by April 1964 and an estimated 10 to 12 million total. Music historians credit it as the Rosetta Stone of garage rock and the UR text of punk music. Virtually all punk traces back to this accidental masterpiece created by exhausted musicians who couldn't afford proper studio time. Number 1, Je t'aime, moi non plus by Serge Gainsbourg and Jane Birkin. The Vatican officially condemned it. Pope Paul VI reportedly excommunicated the Italian record executive who released it. The distributor received a 2-month suspended sentence for offending public morality. This breathy duet simulating intimate activity became the first foreign language single to top British charts, and the first band #1 in UK history. Spain, Sweden, Brazil, Portugal, and Poland banned it outright. The BBC refused to play it. Fontana Records withdrew it under pressure. Then independent label Major Minor picked it up and sent it to #1 anyway. France restricted airplay to after 11 at night. When critics asked Serge Gainsbourg about the controversy, he smiled and called the Pope our greatest public relations man. Gainsbourg originally wrote it for Brigitte Bardot after what he called a disastrous date in late 1967. They recorded it in a 2-hour session with reported heavy involvement, but Bardot's husband demanded they shelve the tape. Gainsbourg later recorded with actress Jane Birkin, asking her to sing an octave higher so you'll sound like a little boy. Birkin admitted she got carried away with the breathing and was told to calm down during recording. The song sold over 6 million copies worldwide despite being banned in most countries. It topped charts in Switzerland, Norway, and Austria. 3 million copies sold in Europe by October 1969. The controversy proved that sometimes being banned by religious authorities is the best marketing strategy imaginable. Gainsbourg understood that perfectly. 12 songs that didn't just play in the background of the 60s. They helped define what that decade meant and what happened when artists decided honesty mattered more than safety. They faced FBI investigations, international bans, Vatican condemnation, and organized campaigns to destroy them. They also sold millions of copies, topped charts, and became the music people remember 50 years later. The musicians who created these tracks understood the stakes. They knew powerful institutions would fight back. They recorded them anyway because they believed music could do more than entertain. It could challenge authority, expose hypocrisy, force uncomfortable conversations into the open. Which one of these takes you right back to where you were when you first heard it? Which song still gives you that feeling of hearing something dangerous coming through the speakers? Share your memories in the comments because those stories matter. If this journey back to when rock and roll genuinely frightened people resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe. We've got more deep dives coming into the decades that built modern music. Thanks for taking this trip with us. See you next time.